Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm OriGoldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
Welcome back, everybody. We're just kind of jumping into conversation here. We got a few things to cover today, and one of them will be the stories that we all tell ourselves. And I purposely started the recording before I was going to tell Ori about my week. This was something that you've always recommended that I do, even last year, is I had too much work going on. I had clients that I hated working, accounts that I like make me miserable, like meetings on my calendar that I'm like, I dread this. And it's not because I don't do well in the meetings. It's not because it's like a heavy lift. It just ruins my entire day. Even a text message from a particular person, and it just makes you instantly anxious, even if you don't even know what the message is yet. You just see the name on your phone. And I had a couple of accounts that were like that for me that I was kind of holding on to because they were decent money, decent monthly income, but I couldn't stand them. And I was doing that thing that most people do, especially in the freelance world, whatever, where I'm like, wow, I get rid of these. Yeah. It's like the scarcity thing. So I went this week and I got rid of the two that I couldn't stand. I should preface this by saying, like, I've gotten a lot better at this over time. Like, I don't dwell on it. I'm not waking up at 2 a.m. and thinking about it, but it is ambient in the back of my mind. Like, shit, I just gave up. I essentially gave up half of my monthly income with the 2 accounts that I got rid of.
That's huge.
I'm relieved. Yeah, and I'm relieved that I don't have to deal with them anymore. Like, very much so. And this is kind of a side note, but I'm also like very confident in some of the stuff we have coming up, like some of the projects we have coming up together, and then with Shift and everything else, that I really want to put my all into that. And I'm very confident about what we have going on there. I know there's no guarantees, but I feel like that's where the energy needs to go, amongst a couple of other things. So the ones that were really holding me back, or that were like just draining my mental bandwidth, and I've been holding on to it for so long. This week, I was like, they can't do it anymore. And as soon as I got out of those meetings, I was like, oh, what did I do? What did I do? But the fact of the matter is, now I have a lot more time on my hands. And it's not just about having hours in the day. As you know, especially with knowledge work, we have a lot of hours in the day, but there's only so many hours we can think and strategize and think clearly. I'm only good for shit. I mean, it's almost 1 o'clock here now. I'm on Central Time, and I'm usually not this clear this late in the day, but I had some methylene blue at the house before I walked down here, and it seems to be helping.
So much we need to share with the group, but like
I know. I actually just listened to another show recently about the benefits of methylene blue, but stuff you told me already, but there's some new study that just reinforced all that. So anyway, usually I don't have this much energy late in the day. My hours for processing mental things are like first thing in the morning, before and after the gym. I'm just like, oh, I got to get all these thoughts out. I have to get all this stuff out, and everything's connected in my brain. Then as the day goes on, like most people, when I say like most people, I'd say most of the high percentage of the population gets a little bit more tired towards the afternoon, late afternoon. And then some people get another second wind in the evening. Like, you're probably one of those guys that, like, once evening comes around, you seem to get like, your mind wakes back up again, or at least you're up late anyway. So
I get my best work done between midnight and 3 a.m. I barely ever do it anymore, but that's my favorite time to work, weirdly enough.
That is remarkable. That is awesome. And we talked about that before, how everybody, there's like the three types of people. The three sleep types,
the bear, the wolf, I don't even remember, but yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. There's some goofy thing. It's like the dolphin and the manatee and the whatever, but it's something like that. But you're either like an early bird, like me. Like, I can pop out of bed at 4 a.m. I'm not necessarily, I like this about myself. It's just the way I am. I can pop out of bed at 4 a.m. and I am just ready for anything. And then, of course, as the day goes, I kind of slump. And there's those people that sleep in a couple hours later than that. And then there's somebody like yourself who can function well into the evening, into the early morning hours, whereas I would just be a complete zombie. So there's that whole thing. And as far as I know, there's 3 types, as far as I know. But on the methylene blue, and we mentioned it, I think, in this show before. If not, we talked about it offline, but it's been studied for years. It was I think it was the first pharmaceutical, like, ever, I believe.
I'm not so sure about that, but it's been around. I think it's early 900s, maybe late 1800s. It's been around for a long time.
It has a ton of cognitive, it's like a blue dye, so you have to be careful where you put your teeth and everything else. And it actually stains countertops and stainless steel sinks. I had to scrub those recently with soft scrub. But it's a cognitive booster, and it has a whole host of other benefits to it that they're still studying. But the latest research supports everything that you told me before. It just keeps getting more and more into that. So anyway, I have a little bit more energy than I normally do this time of day. And
And the one thing I want to mention is the fact that you, before we even start recording this, the thing that you just put up to your mouth right now is actually decaf, which blows me away, Mr. Like, I'm used to caffeine. Like, I think that's pretty amazing. You got more energy, but you're also off of caffeine.
Yeah, well, I have caffeine first thing in the morning. So I have caffeine before the gym, but so my current or my previous caffeine intake was, and this would be helpful because I'm sure most people who listen to watch this probably have the same, that's how we keep our days going. I would have caffeine right before the gym because I don't know what kind of psychopath can go work out in the gym without caffeine. I just don't know who can do it. Now my girlfriend can, so I probably should retract that last thing.
We should take out the word psychopath somewhere. Right?
Yeah. Now, could I work out without it? Could people go running and go exercise without having caffeine? Absolutely. I just feel like I get way more out of the gym. Like I can get a lot done in 20 minutes if I'm caffeinated versus me just walking around, listening to a podcast. So it's more of a efficiency thing.
Stimulant.
It works. So I have it's quite a bit. I have some pre-workout in the morning of probably 250 milligrams, which is 2.5 cups of coffee's worth. But then I was following that up with immediately after the gym, I'd go to a cafe or something, have a cappuccino, which is fairly low in caffeine content, but we're still talking stacking it on top of the pre-workout stuff. And then after lunch would roll around and I would have to get another coffee or cappuccino. It's literally a drug, but what they say, 90% of the planet is on caffeine on a regular basis. So
I really believe it.
I know you're not like, I know you have teas and things like that, but you're not a big caffeine guy, right?
So I'm a cacao. So I call it hot chocolate, but it's actually like pure organic 100% cacao with like a little bit of milk and a little bit of honey. And that is my happy place right now. But I was addicted to caffeine. I mean, like to me, it's when I was really big into the gym. I think I told you about this, and please listeners, do not ever try this because it was one of the worst things I ever did. But I got through this thing of I was living on 5-hour energies. So my routine was, I think I'd exercise at like 4:30 in the morning. And so I would set my alarm clock for 4 a.m. 4 a.m. would come and I'd have a 5-hour energy sitting next to my bed. So 4 a.m. would come, my alarm clock would go off. I'd just reach across in my crazed stupor, reach for the 5-hour energy, down it, put it back down and go back to sleep. My second alarm would go off at 4:30. 4:30, when that alarm goes off, I've got caffeine coursing through my veins like crazy. I am out of bed like no one's business. And like you said, like, I mean, I had an amazing workout, but the thing that did to my system, like it just completely created the craziest amount of havoc. And so for me, what I realized is over time, this was just a recent discovery, maybe a couple of years or so ago, that when I took caffeine out of my life completely, I actually got rid of the afternoon crash and I had better night's sleep. Like caffeine, I just think I'm a slow metabolizer. So even if I have it at like 8 a.m. in the morning, that night I will have a bad night's sleep. And so it's not to say that's the case with everyone, but for me specifically, getting caffeine out of my system and just not ever introducing it in the first place was an amazing good benefit.
Chris Williamson, the podcaster we often reference, he does this thing where he only allows himself to have caffeine every other day. So if I had caffeine today, I wouldn't allow myself it tomorrow. Now that doesn't completely get out of your system because I want to say it's 9 days that it takes for it to completely get off your receptors.
I think that they say that the half-life is like 12 hours, but when you think about it, that just means in 12 hours, half of it is gone. And the next 12 hours, the next half is gone. It just depends on how slowly you metabolize it.
I would encourage anybody to look this up, but I know it was over a week. And well, I think the reason I know that is because of course, I went on that retreat, the one that you went on. I think you're going on again.
March.
I went on that retreat. Yeah, that's right. Are you going to the same place?
Exact same place. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So you're familiar with it and everything. That'll be nice. But I went in there 12 days, no caffeine, got off all types of like mild medications, nothing that I was supposed to get off of or whatever, just things I'm like, I just don't need this stuff anymore. And I came out and what did I do? I went straight to a French bakery in the town because I was waiting for her to come pick me up because it's like an hour and a half from our place. And I'm like, sat down. I'm like, I'm going to come out of here and I'm not going to pig out. I'm not going to have caffeine. I go in there and I'm like, I'll take all the croissants. I'll take all the stuff. I should have stuck it out. But again, I know quitting caffeine's a tall order. We're not going to be one of those shows where we tell people you just have to do or not do all these things. It's unrealistic. But it is crazy with the crash. The methylene blue, however you want to say it, is supposed to help support their cognitive function. It doesn't really have the same effect as caffeine. It doesn't give you the jitters, at least in my experience. I know you've been taking it for a long time. And then you also take, sometimes you have teas and things like that, right?
Maybe once a week, if that, like maybe once every couple of weeks, I'll have myself like some tea that's just lower caffeine. And I think cacao I think it's the equivalent of like 1/5 of a cup of coffee or 1/10 of a cup of coffee. So there's a little bit of caffeine in this, but this doesn't seem to bother me at all. So like, I'm very good with this. But it's,
Yeah.
and like you said, I'm not looking to give anyone some kind of protocol or system because I just don't know well enough. There's enough really intelligent people out there. Personally, for me, I just discovered that was a very big difference.
I would say if anybody's trying to dial back on anything, don't start on a Monday. You don't want to, that's insanity. Maybe start on like a Friday afternoon. Because if you're going to be tired and sluggish and you have to kind of get the headache and the whatever out, better to do it over the weekend. I know that's easy for me to say without kids or anything like that, but you know what I mean? You don't want to have a busy work day ahead or work week ahead.
Good advice.
Just cut it out, but you can dial back. I mean, look, decaf has some caffeine in it, just a little bit. So it is kind of keeping me level there, but yeah, it really affects sleep. I notice now I'm sleeping a lot better. And of course, alcohol has an impact as well. Sleep is everything. That's when all the magic happens. It's when we restore things and everything else.
But now I actually want to take back, you started off this conversation very differently. I actually wanted to go back there for a minute. So you, quote unquote, fired 2 of your clients, which I just think is amazing. So tell me a little bit about what that brought up for you and how that feels now.
It was everything I knew I should have done before. Meaning every appointment or every meeting on the calendar, every task, everything was just miserable, not because they're necessarily miserable people to work with. It just wasn't right for me. So it was making me irritated. Like, it got to the point, and so much resentment had built up because I'm so annoyed with them in my own mind. They probably thought everything was fine. But in my own mind, I'm like, oh, I hate these people so much, I just let it build and build and build. And I think I listened to like Alex Hormozy talk about something, and I'm like, why am I not putting more time into things that I actually want to do? And you've told me this a million times before too, but you know how it is. You have to hear things a million times, and even then, it still doesn't always work.
And you have to hear it from the right people at the right time. It makes a big difference.
For sure. So, I knew all these things in the back of my mind. I knew that I needed to offload these clients. A couple of things happened. I felt a huge weight off myself, just relief, that I didn't have to deal with them anymore, more so than I thought I would. I thought I was just going to be like, okay, that's really nice. I don't have to attend meetings or deal with their stupid messages in Slack and the emails. But I actually felt like a huge relief. I thought it was going to be a minor annoyance gone away, but it was like a huge thing. Like any other remorse that you have, I'm like, oh, was that a good idea? So that's my roller coaster of a day now. And I'll get into that a little bit because now I have a lot more time. It's been phenomenal. I get up in the morning, go log in, whereas I'd usually have to tackle all these stupid little tedious tasks for all these other things. Now I log in and I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to do. Or there are things that need to be done, and it could be for the shift community, it could be for whatever. There are things that need to be done that may not need to be done today, but I'm like, oh, I can actually get into this today. I can start this today. That way we're not like so crammed in. So across the boards with the mental bandwidth and having more time, it's been phenomenal. But it has been a little nerve wracking. And like today, like even walking down here before we started recording, I was like, was that the best idea? Now it's too late now.
So, you're hitting on things on such a big level here. And I know that we've discussed this before, but this is just the perfect example of it. And so, as we said, this is a book that will be coming out at some point in time. It's just, I'm going to get my butt into gear and make it happen. But we've spoken a few times about R equals D over N, where your relationship with anything is your desire for it divided by your need for it. And as you talk, the thing that goes on in my mind as I'm kind of calculating that is you sat there saying, I need these clients. If I don't have these clients, I'm going to go broke. My life is going to become a complete shambles. So you got a high level of need and you've got a very low level of desire. I don't want to do this work. When you think about it, think about the level of relationship you had with them. You just hated being around them because low desire, low number divided by big number equals a very, very small number. So you had a terrible relationship with them. And so what happens is now you've gotten rid of it because your desire to just be away from them just got big enough. But now you're still in that story in terms of but what about my money? It's, oh my God, what's going on? And that takes us to the next level, which is the stories we tell ourselves. But first, before we even get there, I really want people to just really analyze this from that D divided by N, because it's just such a perfect example of exactly that. So you start something new and you think that it's going to be something really wonderful for you. So you've got a high level of desire for it, and you may have a high level of need for it, but it doesn't seem that bad. Now, all of a sudden, as you get into it more and more, what you start realizing is your need may actually even grow because you start telling yourself stories about this is the only way I'm going to get money. This is the perfect thing for me. But now your desire starts to drop. And the more that numerator drops, the faster your relationship declines. So the example that very often happens, that was just in my life, this is going back to 2019, is relationships. So for me, I was always in a place of just the way I was raised, whatever it was always that concept of men are the beggars in relationship. Men need to get those women to like them. And after a lot of work on myself, something inside of me just made a huge shift. And I just finally said to myself, what happens if I just die alone? Like just absolutely screw it. I'll just live one night stands for the rest of my life, for as long as that lasts, whatever it is. And I'd rather be alone than be in a crappy relationship. And what happened to me in that moment was my need dropped away almost completely. And at the same time, unfortunately, my desire also dropped away with it. So I found myself for a short period of time just not interested in relationships at all and taking a lot of care of myself. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to be in my own place, and that's just the way it's going to be. As I was spending more time with myself and I developed a lot more self-love, what I discovered was that there was something inside of me that really enjoyed being around a certain group of people, the people that were really resonating with me. In this case, it was joy, where we were having these really wonderful conversations and everything was great. And as I was connecting more and more with joy, I felt this strong sense of desire to want to be with her. But at the same time, I was still in that place of sitting there telling myself, but if it doesn't work out, I don't need her. And I remember when I finally had the guts to finally say something to Joy, it was truly a heartfelt statement I just said to her. I was just like, look, I don't know where this is going to go. And I'm not saying this because I need to be with you or anything else. I really love spending time with you. And I'm telling her about my desire. I really, really enjoy spending time with you. And I think that we could make for a really good couple. And so with that, I would love us to go ahead and experiment with it because I really think that's great. But if you say no, I mean, I still love you as a friend, and that's absolutely fine. And what happened was I took all the pressure off of myself and off of her. And as we got into the relationship, that little voice in my head started going a bit crazy, as it tends to do. Saying they're going, oh my God, I got one. Let's hold on to her as tightly as possible. So my needs started rising because I hadn't completely dealt with things. And so I slowly started working through that. And I just sat there saying, do you know what? I'm just going to be honest with her. And if she doesn't like it, she wasn't the right person for me. And I'm going to go back to being by myself. And it took me a while to go through that, to really kind of just tame that beast inside of myself of, I need to be in a relationship. This is what's normally accepted of you. This is what society expects. But as I started taming that need and I started just telling myself, I'm going to be completely myself. If she loves me for me, we're in this. If she doesn't love me for me, I don't want to be part of this. And to this day, I know I've said this to you so many times, I still play this game with Joy that I'll often tell her, I don't need you in my life. I love having you in my life. If you leave tomorrow, my life is still going to be great. I will, as far as I know, you leave my life and I never have another relationship for as long as I live. So be it. I'm still going to be good. So what happened was dropping that need and then raising my desire. What happened now is I want to do all these beautiful, amazing things with Joy. I want her in my life and all these different things. And at the same time, if she does something that upsets me, I don't feel bad, like that little child inside of me that's afraid of confrontation or afraid that I'm going to say something that's going to upset her and make her want to break up with me. That little child is now comforted saying, I'm going to tell her my truth. If she doesn't like it, I can't do anything about that. And it changes everything. And so for you right now, the thing is, I can see that as you talk about it, the need level is still high. So what's gone on is the desire just completely crashed everything. But that part inside of you is sitting there going, I'm freaking out. Oh my God, I need some form of money again. Did I make the wrong mistake? Whatever it was, that boils down to a story you tell yourself around the only way you can earn money.
Nothing's ever as bad as we think it's going to be. So, and I've
Amen.
also call it luck or call it just, I don't want to call it the universe providing. It's been very uncanny for me, who's somebody who's spiritual in a sense, but I don't believe in luck or anything like that. I just think we're just going through life and things happen the way they happen. Again, not opposed to it. I'm not superstitious or any of that shit. But every single time that there's been whether it's been a financial issue or something else, even down to the last day, it's very strange. If I sat and thought long enough, come up with 10 solid examples over the last 20 plus years of times where I've literally been out of money and then the rent was due the next day. And then somehow money came in, not just randomly showed up, like somebody owed me something, they finally paid. You know what I mean? It's just very, very weird how that's happened. Part of me is going through everything you're saying where I'm still worried about it, still concerned. The other part of me, because I have so many years of experience now of it always working out. So those two things are fighting in my brain right now because I'm I know it's going to work because it's not one. This would be the first time it didn't work.
Now you're hitting on the next part of it, which is the stories we tell ourselves, right? So it's just, and this is the part that I just love so much. So as a matter of fact, what I want to do is I want to share a little video with you right now, super quick. that is just, it really does things in a really good way. Just to give you a little bit of background here. So this is actually just someone talking about it, because I'm trying to find a bit of a short video around it, but it really does things pretty well. So
Howie, hear my voice. This is the only suggestion I will give you. Gloves are okay with you. You're not afraid of germs in gloves. I'm wearing gloves now. I'm a huge fan of you.
No. Oh, yes. America's Got Talent started off this season with a touching moment. That is hypnotist Chris Jones touching germaphobe Howie Mandel.
Thank you so much. I have nice gloves on. That'll be great, please. All right, appreciate it.
Yes, it's true. After Chris hypnotized Howie, he was able to do what very few have done and shake Howie's bare hand, which was very surprising to everyone, especially Howie.
For the first time in a long time, you were able to shake his hand, and he is not wearing a glove.
No, he
He's
didn't.
not.
He was. You were wearing a glove?
No, he wasn't.
No.
Are you being
He
serious?
hypnotized
I'm
you to
really
think.
sorry to trick your mind.
So you shook hands twice. Are you effortless?
No, I'm not. And Chris Jones wasn't done there. Once Howie was seated, Chris came over, and just by writing a note to Howie, the young hypnotist was able to put him back under, where everyone was supposedly wearing gloves.
Nice to see you today.
I see you.
I know, it is pretty crazy. With Howie out of his hand-shaking trance, it was time to vote, although he was going to have to excuse himself from the voting process.
Howie, what do you say? Yes?
I don't know.
You don't know. You're a judge. Doesn't matter. You know why? Because once you see the playback, you're going to kill him anyway. So it doesn't matter.
like, let's just consider what just happened there for a moment. So Howie Mandel has been a huge germaphobe for a couple of decades now, to the point that like no one could touch him. He can't do anything. Hypnotist goes up on America's Got Talent, hypnotizes him, and while he's under hypnosis, he says, I'm just going to be wearing a very thin pair of latex gloves. And he says, and he wakes Howie up, and then he says, hey, Howie, pleasure to meet you. And puts out his hand to shake Howie's hand. Because he's wearing a pair of latex gloves in Howie's mind, Howie has no problem shaking his hand. Howie comes out of the hypnosis and now is freaking out, and he goes, sleep again. The guy sleeps. He says, now everyone in the world is wearing a thin pair of latex gloves. All of a sudden, Howie's able to shake everyone else's hand until as long as that trance lasts. Now, the reason why I love this story so much is because when you really think about what's going on there, is it easily points to the fact that Howie just needed a story in his mind that made it okay for him to live in this world where everything was going to be okay. And hypnosis, in this case, hypnosis was the thing that managed to create that for him. And I just love that concept in terms of the fact of you don't need to live in reality. You need to live in a story that easily makes that happen for you. And so we've discussed this in the past, and you mentioned this right before I went into the video, of the fact that you just have a natural sense of faith that things are going to work out for you. You don't know how, you've got enough experiences that prove it to you. As you know, one of my favorite sayings for myself is God renews my life. And I'm not necessarily saying that you need to be very religious about this or anything else, or that God has a crush on me. Do I believe in God? I don't really know whether I believe in God or not. Do I believe that God has a crush on me? I don't really know if I believe it or not. But I've used enough hypnosis on myself, and I've literally hypnotized myself into the fact that even though that there's one part of my mind that doesn't know it, there's another part of my mind that knows that for a fact, the same way that Howie felt when someone was shaking his hand, that they were wearing gloves and everything was safe. So what happens for me now is when I go into a situation where I feel like that something dangerous might happen, there's that little voice in the back of my head that says, God has your back. Everything is going to be okay. And there's no reason in the world why I need to believe it. But as you know from the 500-year thought experiment that I know was just released into our podcast recently, it's when you have that sense of faith that things are going to work out, you're just in a place where you don't need things to occur in a certain way. You're just perfectly fine with it. And so for you, you've got enough experiences that have proved to you now that, like, even if I go and I go on this wild tangent and I lose these clients, somehow the money's going to show up. There's no proof of that, but somewhere in your mind, because you have that thought, you feel that much safer in doing things. And to me, that is the difference that makes such a big difference, because I see this with all my clients in every single way, shape, and form, in terms of the fact that 90% of the work I need to do with them is get them out of the story that's telling them, I'm going to use you as an example, I don't know where the money's going to come from, and just get them into a story of sitting there saying, I don't really know how, but everything's going to work out fine. And as soon as you get into that place inside of yourself, you get into that place of resourcefulness. And because you believe it, you start finding all these different things. All of a sudden you talk to a person, and because you think things are going to work out fine, all of a sudden when a person mentions another client, you go like, oh, let me talk to them, or something like that. Just because your mind has that story, it starts making the connections, assuming maybe this is how things are going to work out fine for me. Maybe this is how it's going to work out. And that small change changes everything. And that to me is, like I said, 90% of my work. It's really and truly just getting a person to just get into the story that allows their past issue to no longer be there.
Yeah, I know we got into an early show about that book that neither one of us are a huge fan of, The Secret. But what I do like about the idea of it, the book is, for me, it's just too much. But what I do like the idea behind it though is, so let's say I drop the clients, and then I'm like, okay, I'm starting to feel down about myself. I'm starting to worry. So then I run into people in person, and I start like, they could tell a negative vibe off of me. And or I go to other meetings, or I do other things, they could feel like something's just not right, or I have low energy, or I'll do what I usually do, or what I have done in the past. I'll go like, I deserve a drink today, which again is fine, but then I'm not getting anything done after that. So then I lost all this. So I think just how you, like you just said, how you put yourself out there, like, hey, everything's going to be okay. I'm not sure how yet. It's okay to feel a little anxious. There's no reason to fight it, because that never works anyway. And just go about the day, and then opportunities will show up. And again, it's not about manifesting or anything else like that, but like how you put yourself out in the world makes a big difference, and just having the energy to do things.
And to me, that is exactly what The Secret's really about. Like, I mean, forgetting the whole concept of whether the universe is providing for you or not. It's really like, and I'll take it back to that concept of dating, for example. If a guy walks into a bar and feels like I need to find the right girl, he's coming in with such a needy energy that anyone he talks to is going to feel like it's, oh God, please talk back to me. Please like me. Or if a girl is in a place that she just feels like that no one likes her, and she just feels super needy, that's going to come across. And there's nothing attractive about that. Whereas very often, if I just work with a client, like I said, like I worked with myself in 2019, I get to that place in terms of just sitting there saying, whether it works out or whether it doesn't work out, I don't really care. Like, I think that you're a pretty great person. Let's just have a conversation. You come across as just calm and comfortable, and comfortable in your own skin. And it comes across as a completely different thing. And I've seen this so many times. Relationships is a common one. Another common one is in job interviews. It's a very common thing. For example, a person goes into job interviews saying they're going nervous over, oh God, what are they going to think of me? How do I do? As opposed to saying they're going, and I love doing this with clients. I just did this with a client somewhat recently, in terms of just going into a job interview going like, I know that what I can give you is exactly what you guys need. Now tell me how it is that I can be of best service to you. Think about just that difference in mindset. And it's just a difference in, like, if you really believe that you're the right person for the job, that job belongs for you, right? Like, if you're going in there going like, oh my God, I need this job so badly. You go in there going, oh, now tell me, I think I can do that. You're putting out such a weird energy that the person isn't going to feel it. It's, to me, like I've always told my clients, is when you go into interview, you should be interviewing them to find out, make sure that they are the right client for you. Not you should be sitting there going in there trying to impress them. And that is the story you tell yourself, and it makes such a big difference.
And you don't necessarily have to believe it yourself either, because I've done this when you were talking about the bars. I was like, because I've done that a lot, where I've gone to the bar and I see some girl that I really, really want to talk to. I want to get her number, whatever, at least opening a conversation up. In my mind, I'm like, oh my God, like all the things that I want to instinctually do, which I know will not work. And I have to, like, as I'm there, just talk, like, now don't look at her too much. Just talk to the people around her, talk to her friends, all the other little things. So sometimes I've done that. I've done that out drinking, and I've also gone to meetings before, or into job discovery calls, whatever you want to call them. And I'm like, I really, really want this. I really need this, but I'm essentially going to act like I don't. So even if I don't feel it exactly, I can still talk myself into putting the front on. And that usually works too. It's a little bit harder to do, but you don't necessarily need to believe it to your core. You can pull it off.
Like I said, when you take the concept of God has a crush on me, for example, like I don't believe that to my core, weirdly enough. I do believe it to my core, but there's still that voice in my head going like, I don't really know what this God thing is really about. And as I work more and more with it, I actually create more of a quote unquote relationship with God, for example, that does become stronger for me. But I'm not saying that I need to believe it. What I need to do is live within that story. And as I live within that story, it makes the biggest difference for me. It really is something that just really just resonates so deeply with me. So there's a couple of things about that fake it till you make it thing that I also wanted to bring up. I call it fake it till you make it. And there's a lot of people, like especially people in the film industry, for example, that they actually, when you find out about their lives, they're very introverted. Put them up on stage or put them up in front of a camera and they're a completely different person because they adopt a new persona. It's adopting that persona of what that situation requires of you that makes such a big difference. Sure. But the thing that I'll say that makes such a big difference here is you can't absolutely fake it. If you're going into a place and sitting there saying, I don't believe this at all, but I'm going to go into the bar and act that way, all that happens is you come across as just someone that's completely fake. Whereas if you can just put yourself into that persona and kind of just step into those shoes just enough that in the back of your mind, you have that cognitive dissonance saying, I know that this isn't me, but right now I can step into this persona and really feel it. That to me is what the secret is really, really, really about. It's about really actually experiencing the life of that other being. So when you go into that interview and you sit there going, I don't know this for a fact, but like, I really think that I am a good match for this job. So I'm going to talk that way. Or you go into a bar and you say, like, I know that she's really wonderful, but like, I'm going to step into the world where I might be the exact right thing for her too. And I don't need to believe it absolutely, but I need to believe it enough that I don't come across and they're going like, I'm the best thing for you and don't feel it at all. It just doesn't work. And that to me is just like the one slight difference. You can't absolutely fake it, but you also don't need to 100% be there. I
shouldn't say this applies to dating, but it does. Well, I'm getting canceled again. But for example, if I'm dating and I'm single, if I'm talking to more than one woman over the course of a week or whatever, it really does take the edge. Same applies to business as well. If I have revenue coming in and other things going on, again, I really want this, but I don't need it. It's okay if it doesn't pan out. That really does help. And not everybody can do that all the time. Some people are literally out of work and they really need something, so they have to really apply harder.
I'll pause you there for a second because I don't necessarily know if that's true. Like I agree with you completely that sometimes they say that the easiest time to find a new relationship is when you're in the old one, right? Because like at that point in time, you don't really care so much. It's not that it's the right time to do it. It's just the easiest time to do it, right? Or it's the easiest time to find work is when you're already employed. But this is where that element of faith comes in. The idea of like, you right now got rid of those clients, but you have that extra thought in the back of your head that lets you know, I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't know the process of getting there, but somehow, somewhere deep in my mind, I know things are going to work out. So when you talk to a client, you don't need to go into that needy place of saying, please, please, please choose me because otherwise I can't pay my rent. You sit there going, my rent is going to get paid. I don't really know how, but I feel safe about it. And that to me is that concept of like that relationship I have with God to some degree in terms of, I don't really know how things are going to work out. I just have faith that they will. And they may work out really terribly at first, but in the long run, I just somehow have that faith inside of me that things are going to work out okay. And it changes everything. It absolutely changes the way you present yourself to the world in total.
As we're talking and thinking about all these things, and I have all that reinforcement from many, many failures, many things that worked out, all the things that lined up, that I know that everything's going to be okay. What could somebody do who doesn't have all that extra reinforcement? Because I'm just going off of memories. I'm like, I know this worked out for me in the past, but I'm sure there's people listening and watching that are like, okay, well, that's great. Well, I haven't had that happen to me ever before. You know what I mean? So how do I get started?
So there's a lot of different ways to do it. So like the three that come up in my mind right now is the fact that if you actually look in your life enough, you will find memories that say, like, so for example, like, let's just say you don't feel very comfortable in a job interview, for example, but you felt comfortable in sports, or you felt comfortable in a relationship, or you felt comfortable around your best friends having a good conversation. All you need to do is just step into that place where you just felt like it was an easy, comfortable conversation, and remind yourself that you actually do have the resource. You just haven't piggybacked it into this kind of situation yet. So everyone does have those kinds of memories, which is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, like we said, it's the fake it till you make it, which is a little bit tougher, but it still works very well, where what you do is that you specifically just think about the persona. And this is what they actually teach, for example, in Hollywood to movie stars, the concept of you establish a new persona of the person that is comfortable in that situation. You actually imagine yourself differently. It might even involve you dressing differently and putting on a different pair of glasses, like almost like the Clark Kent Superman idea. You actually give yourself some kind of a specific, what in hypnosis would call an anchor, that attaches you to that other persona. And then the third one is, it's very similar to the second one, but it's what would be called role modeling, where what you do is you actually think of another person that already has that and you step into their shoes. So for example, like let's just take public speaking, just because it's something that came up in the top of my head. Imagine stepping into the shoes of, if you're a woman, imagine stepping into the shoes of, what's her name? Taylor Swift, for example, and being up on stage in front of a group of 10,000 people and loving it and actually imagining all those people talking to you. Or for me, for example, I imagine stepping into the shoes of Tony Robbins, where for him, standing up on stage is just the most natural, comfortable thing in the world. And that idea of like, if you just can, all you're really trying to do here, however you get there, is to step into that reality enough that you can see the situation and feel the way you want to feel. This is a bit of a bigger concept that, like, it's just, to me, it's the difference that makes a difference. It's the idea of separating the head and the body. What you want to do is, in your head, you want to basically be in the place that you can imagine the situation. And in your body, you want to be in the feeling that is what you want that situation to be. But what most people do is that they bring their head and their body together into the same situation, in which case they continue the story of going like, when I'm in this situation, I'm very scared. What I'm telling you to do is imagine the situation and feel calm. Those are the two things you want to connect together.
You know, it's funny, we were talking about my glasses before we started recording. I actually remember, based on some type of persona shifting thing that I read a couple of years ago, I remember when I was fairly new at my current job, I would go into meetings and I associated these with shifting into my good in meetings. And I've been in meetings before. I worked for the government. I had a lot of employees. Like, I've been in meetings before. But it's funny, like I made these my, like the Clark Kent Superman thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would put these on and again, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, that's bullshit. But it actually helped. I go into meetings like, it's okay, you got your glasses on now. Like you sound great. You don't sound like a fool.
But think about how powerful that is, right? I think as simple as just having something in your life. For me, when I talk to people, I like to play with something in my hands. And for whatever reason, just having some kind of something that anchors me to reality makes me feel more comfortable. It's like, it's small little anchors that make a large difference for you. So I love the fact that you had that. And like, that to me is just such a big thing. Again, it's just the idea of bringing your body into the situation of where your head wants to be. And what most people do is that they just never do it. So they bring their body into the old story. They're carrying the fear that they have, etc. So to take it back to the Howie Mandel story, for example, it's what the hypnotist did was, from here down, he had him feeling calm, like everyone is wearing gloves. And then he goes and he puts them into the reality of shaking people's hands, and he goes, you got gloves. I don't care at all. So the head was bought into with the body of calm. And all of a sudden he's like, what's the big deal here? But so many people just can't wrap their heads around the fact that you can actually genuinely separate your thought and your feelings. But as soon as you can really, really lock those two things into two separate compartments, you can bring any emotion into any situation. And that's where the real power lies. The one thing I also want to say is, like, when you are in a place that you do have your head and body too attached and you can't get there, one of my favorite ways to create that dissociation is actually asking yourself the very specific question, what story am I telling myself right now? Well, let's just take the example of going into a job interview, for example, and you realize that you're feeling nervous and you sit there going, what story am I telling myself right now? Well, I think that if I don't get this job, I'm going to be a failure and I'm going to live under a bridge. As soon as you can kind of like get that dissociation away from it and notice what it is that you are saying in your head that makes your body feel nervous, it creates that dissociation that you say, like, I don't need to think this kind of craziness. Or if you're in a bar and you sit there going like, oh my God, I'm nervous to talk to that beautiful girl. What story am I telling myself right now? That she's out of my league and I'll never stand a chance. Well, of course you're feeling nervous if you do that, right? Whereas if you just sit there saying like, I think that I'm an amazingly well put together package and that she would be lucky to have me. Or if we aren't a good match, I want to know that as soon as possible so I can just move on to the girl that is right for me. In that story, what happens is you're bringing in a much more confident, calm body. And that one statement, as you realize the fact that you're bringing in an old body into the current situation because your head is telling you a story, all you have to do is just create that cognitive dissociation of, what story am I telling myself right now? Such a powerful way to like make such a huge shift. And the one thing I'll say here is, the one thing that really helped me with this very powerfully is the concept of the emotional alchemy journal, or as we call it, the self-acceptance journal. Because as I realize that there's certain things are really bothering me, and I just go into just going into free form writing and just thinking about anything, I can see the stories so clearly. And then as soon as I see the story, I'm in a place of sitting there going like, that's just stupid. Like that's just crazy. And I accept myself whether I'm liked or not, or I accept myself regardless of the situation. But sometimes you just need any way to really understand what story is going on inside of you.
Get it out on paper so you can read it back and realize there's some insight in there, there's some brilliance in there, and there's some stuff that you're like,
Yeah.
this guy's crazy.
Yeah, get it out on paper or talk to someone that you really trust. Not someone that's going to sit there and wallow with you in your pain, but someone that will just sit there and ask you like the tough questions in terms of, is that really real? What's really going on for you right now? And as those questions are asked, all that you're looking to do is create that dissociation away from the story enough that you can actually get the right perspective. Because like I said, one of my favorite parts of my philosophy is we are all living in a made-up fantasy world. That is a fact. I'm not living in reality. I am living in reality, but I'm not really existing in reality. I'm existing in my own story in my mind. Given the fact that I know that to be true, let me make up the story that works best for me. So here's the part that wasn't seen on the video was after the hypnotist hypnotized Howie, Howie got very upset with the hypnotist, sitting there saying like it wasn't fair that it happened and he needed more therapy and everything else. And I can understand how that happened because he was tricked into it. But
Sure.
What if you could take that one step further and Howie could actually just say, do you know what? This guy showed me something that is so powerful. The fact that if I just imagine that I'm wearing gloves, nothing is scary to me anymore. And instead of getting upset, he goes, oh, I was just telling myself a story, and the only thing I need to change in that story is people are wearing gloves, and all of a sudden I feel safe around people. If you realize that small difference, you've now created a new story for yourself. It's still a story. People are wearing gloves. But now all of a sudden the world seems so much less scary to you. If you're already living in a story, just choose the story that works for you, and the whole world feels that much better for you.
That's well said. Well, I think that's a great place to end, although we could go on with this stuff forever. Every time we do one of these things and we're trying to figure out, like, guys, there's so many offshoots on different things. So please, anybody who has any questions on anything that we say in any of these shows or has suggestions or ideas for other, drop them in there. Because we're always looking for things to talk. We have so much to talk about, but we're always interested in hearing what people are struggling with. And it's okay if we end up revisiting a previous topic, because that's what we're here for. We're here to reinforce things and to take different takes on previous content. So maybe there's something you heard or saw in episode 3 that you want us to expand on. So we appreciate that. So we've got some big things coming up with the community. We've got some big things that'll be coming up with the human evolution movement. Now that I have more time on my hands, there are things that it works. And there will be a new audio format going out, probably twice a month, depending upon how fast we can crank those out, of some of the articles and just thought experiments that Ori's done. I'll be reading them in audio format only, just to make it a little more clear and concise. We don't want to put a bunch of fancy stuff up on the screen. It's mostly something you can listen to while you're driving or working out or whatever. And feel free to criticize those too. Guys, let me know if I need to be louder, quieter, or slow down for those that listen to me on
I will tell you, I think you've got a very sexy narrator voice. I absolutely love the way you read it.
Well, that helps, yeah, because you know how it is. Nobody likes the sound of their own voice, so it's like you get used to it, but you never really love it. Like now, I can hear myself talk all day, but I'm like, oh, this guy, he won't shut up. So, but again, we do appreciate everybody, and big things coming, and to be continued.
Yeah, love you guys. Thanks, Lee.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. Ever wondered how journaling could help change your life? You can find out by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. It's a powerful tool for deep self-reflection, and it's completely free. And if you're looking to connect with Ori and learn more about how he can help you, visit his website at OriGoldstein.com. A link will also be in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.